Warsaw is about 250 kilometres and less than 3 hours' drive from Poland's eastern border near Białystok. Last year, the ruler of neighbouring Belarus launched a hybrid war against the European Union and NATO. The weapons in this war are migrants, lured to Belarus with the promise of easy passage to Germany and lavish benefits there. Between Belarus and Germany lies Poland, a country which does not want anyone to break the law and cross its borders through the forest, a country that does not give in to blackmailers. Since last summer, Polish border guards and police guarding the border have been supported by the Polish army. This is the biggest operation by the army in years. They are defending the border of Poland, the European Union and the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. I'm going to see how they do it.
Finally we've arrived, and the first thing you noticed among the military vehicles is this sign. Thank you for your service and for protecting our border. Because I'm here at the headquarters of the Rosomak Task Force of the 12th Mechanized Division. They are defending the Polish border. And not only the Polish border, this is also the border of NATO. Its easternmost border, not far from where we're standing, Belarusian forces are trying to make immigrants cross the border into Poland. And that's what these troops are defending. We're going to meet their officer, Colonel Tomasz Klanowska, their commander. We're going to meet some of the soldiers. We're going to see them in action. We're going to learn what they're doing here to defend Poland and, of course, by implication, to defend NATO. It's vital work, and it's very interesting to see how they're tackling it. Stay with us and just see what a good job they're doing. Tell me, how does guarding the Polish border against illegal immigrants compare to your, what I would call your normal military duties?
Sure, so every Polish soldier taking a military oath declares to protect and defend our country's independence and its borders. So this border security operation fits perfectly with what we've been trying for.
You are the task force commander of the Rosomak Task Force, but you're normally part of the 12th Mechanized Brigade.
Yes, affirmative. So basically our rotation period is 2-3 week rotation. Then we have 2 weeks off, get back to our unit, to our barracks for some kind of recovery and consolidation. Then we get back here.
And could you just, because it's quite interesting, I think, describe a typical soldier's day in terms of how long they spend at the border, what they do, how much time they have for relaxation?
So we conduct this operation, of course, absolutely speaking 24/7, but they have like 12-hour duty on observation post, sealing the borderline and supporting the border guard operating at the borderline, but then have 12-hour rest and 12-hour in reserve. They are on station in their accommodation, their barracks, to reinforce our borderline OPs if needed. This kind of operation is different with what we routinely train our soldiers for in barracks, in our home barracks. Here we provide some extra training with like for guards on the OPs, and it differs, but our soldiers adjust quickly to new situation. 12th Brigade deploys troops to Lebanon, they takes part in the trainings and military exercise abroad and in Poland, but at the same time we send soldiers here to the borderline for border security operation. We're quite busy, but on the other hand it's a great experience, and we have opportunities to learn new skills and provide soldiers with new abilities to fight and defend our countries.
How many soldiers do you have?
So 12th Mechanized Brigade consists of more than 3,000 soldiers. I would say that almost every soldier took part in this operation here at least once. But we have lots of soldiers who deployed here more than once.
How do your soldiers deal with this sort of attack on their morale which is coming from the east?
Polish border is simultaneously NATO border. So we feel that defending this border, conducting this security operation, we secure other NATO members. And it is acknowledged that other NATO armies, countries, are going to deploy other troops to reinforce our operation here.
So it's like in a funny sort of way. I mean, I know it's deadly serious, but it is actually a real live training exercise because you are doing what soldiers do. You're defending the borders of Poland.
Exactly. For a long time, since I remember, we haven't had the opportunity like that to train in a real life scenario. This combat operation like this. The only deployments abroad were like a combat operation in the real war zone or combat zone. But here we have our weapon with live ammunition doing the job, protecting our society here. So we feel like real soldiers protecting our country and our citizens.
As we can see, the 12th Division is well established here. But now it's back to the studio where Conrad will give us the latest news from NATO headquarters.
Thanks, Nicholas. Well, last December, Russia issued demands to the US, NATO, and the collective West. The Kremlin wants to re-establish its zone of influence in Eastern Europe and force the US to lower the readiness of its troops on the continent. Russia is insisting NATO effectively rewind the clock to 1997 before it admitted numerous countries from the former Eastern Bloc, including Poland. The first week of January brought a series of meetings. In Geneva, Switzerland, representatives of Russia met those from the US. At NATO headquarters in Brussels, a Russian envoy spoke to the alliance's ambassadors. Finally, in Vienna, Austria, the Russians met with the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, this year chaired by Poland. Talks at the NATO headquarters took nearly 4 hours, and the West flatly rejected Moscow's demands. Following the meeting, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said the core principles of the alliance cannot be discussed, and NATO countries did not accede to Moscow's demand for a guarantee that Ukraine and Georgia never join the alliance. The Secretary General reported that the Allies had demanded that Russia de-escalate the situation on the border with Ukraine and pull back its forces. The lead U.S. official in the talks, Deputy Secretary of State Wendy Sherman, said that allies demonstrated complete unity in confronting Russia. She called the meeting a remarkable expression of the power of diplomacy and said 30 sovereign nations spoke separately, NATO allies, and also spoke as one. The NATO allies spoke in complete unity in support of a set of critical international principles, that all countries must be able to choose their own foreign policy orientation, that sovereignty and territorial integrity are sacrosanct. All right, over to you, Nicholas.
Thank you, Conrad. And now we're continuing our look at the work of the 12th Division, here near the Belarusian border. Colonel, we've seen some of your soldiers in action doing their work outside. Would it be possible just to see the sort of facilities they have for when they're off duty?
Absolutely. Our soldiers, they have a chance to utilize local gyms and other civilian installations because the civilians cooperate with us. They also have their recreation area here in our building where we live. They have a coffee machine, they drink coffee, they play dart.
Thank you. So this is your recreation area.
Yes, sir. This is our recreation area. Here we have a dart room.
Oh yes.
You see the
dart game in progress. Excellent. Yep. And over there I can see some table football.
Table football for soldiers.
Very good.
Yeah.
And of course here is the most important room, I think, the queue for the coffee machine.
Exactly, and the Xbox.
And the Xbox for those who enjoy computer games. So this is actually quite, to say you're sort of essentially on operations and this is not sort of your normal barracks, this is actually not too bad.
Yeah, it's not too bad, and it's always crowded with soldiers spending time here. So it proves that it's needed, and it plays its role here for soldiers to make them busy during their free time.
So I imagine for the local village here, because it's a village outside, it was a bit of a shock to see soldiers with guns and their trucks walking up and down the street and sort of behaving like soldiers.
Yes, exactly, and it was point we mentioned with the local mayor during my last meeting. He told me, described this village half year before, like totally empty, with just a few cars passing by, without crowded streets. But nowadays they have lots of soldiers hanging around, lots of military trucks, and the scenery has changed definitely. So yeah, you're right that this is something unusual for locals.
I think it would be unusual anywhere in the world, to see soldiers. But just on that, because here we're in the recreation zone, so people are very relaxed. But because at the border, as we were saying earlier, I mean, your soldiers do face some particular aggression, not from the immigrants so much because they're civilians, but from the Belarusian services. I mean, things like shooting, firing, shining lasers into your eyes and throwing stones. I mean, how do you deal with that?
So this is the place when they can release the pressure they come across at the borderline during their duty on a peace. The Belarusian services, they throw stones, they use flashlights, they use lasers to our soldiers, and this is a kind of the pressure that our soldiers they have to fight with. Migrants, they don't pose the significant threat for our soldiers. These are people used as a tool with Belarusian services, and we understand this. We try to protect migrants as well, but our main duty is to protect the border, support the border guard, and protect the Polish and NATO members.
This is what you call the lower base. What actually happens here?
So this is our, as you said, second camp, and what's interesting here, the local businessman, local farmer granted permission to use these installations, this area, with no charge. So we use it for our dining facilities and for our service support battalion to set up all the installations to provide our soldiers with food, water, and other supplies needed for accomplishing their task on the borderline. As you see, our kitchen is being reorganized now.
Okay.
We have our lift, our logistic trucks, and our qualified specialists to move the installations to new location to improve everything here to serve our soldiers more efficiently.
Here we are, on the very border, the eastern border of Poland, the European Union and NATO. This is the border which has been under attack in hybrid warfare since last summer. Belarus is cynically pushing immigrants, or trying to push immigrants, over the border into Poland. And in this programme we've met the people from the Polish army who are here defending the border. And as you see, they're well organised, they're committed, and they have high morale. And that is what it's all about, protecting Poland and NATO and the European Union from enemy forces. And they're doing a good job, as I'm sure you'll agree. That's all we have on this edition of NATO Dispatches, but do join us again when we look more at how NATO is defending this part of Europe.